This afternoon, what we have here is a panel. At the moment, it looks like the panel might be bigger than the those attending, but that's fine. It's absolutely no problem. Just means you get more of our personal attention and get all your questions answered. So welcome, Leanne and Sam. Really what the panel, the idea of a panel is that you get different perspectives. So you've got different people who've done things different ways, and you get different, they bring different perspectives and experience and that kind of thing, which is really helpful. So I'm going to get them all to introduce themselves to you. And Ruth, there's actually quite a few of us here who are experienced with children having gone through exams and so on. So I will get them all to introduce themselves to you because there's a lot of us, but that's fine. So Ruth, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously, you know my name because it's on the screen, Ruth Barber. I'm married to Charles, and we have 7, well, I want to say 7 children, but the reality is we've only got 2 children now because the rest of them are all over 18. All of them have done exams except for the youngest, who are just kind of, well, the second to youngest is just doing 2 this time. So we've got, I think next week we finish this year's exam season, and the youngest is yet to do them. We've got 3 that are at university or beyond. So obviously we've taken the GCS route, although initially we didn't plan to do that, but obviously maybe later I'll explain a little bit more about that if it fits in. But that's me. So it's nearly 20 years, I think, home educating. So please forgive the grey hair.
Hello.
Sorry, I can't really see my unmute button because I've got 2 screens and the one is blocking the other. And then Kat, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Kat Patrick. I am originally from Texas, and I lived 25 years in Britain. And then about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I moved back to my native Texas, partly for family reasons and also because I actually prefer the American university system, which is liberal arts. And I wanted my 4 kids to go that route. And also they do sport and they swim in college. So I now have my 3rd one graduating from school and going off to university in the autumn. And I also am just graduating from university, my eldest, who, by the way, is graduating summa cum laude and has been invited to the National Honor Society, which we just found out about yesterday. So very excited in that. Her majors were English and astrophysics, which is exactly why we came to America to do this university study. So why am I here? I guess 2 things. One is I'm sort of the alternative perspective of different routes to higher education. I run a Facebook group called HE Success Without UK Exams, where we talk about using the American sort of portfolio system for going even to UK exams or UK university, or even US university if someone's interested in that. And then the other hat that I wear is I'm actually an examiner for Cambridge English language and English literature. So I come at it from also a very practical viewpoint from the, I guess the backroom side of things. So that's me. Thanks.
Thanks, Kat. And then we've got Alice and Krish who come as a buy one, get one free offer.
Hi, I'm Alice. Yeah, so you can see Krish, my husband, on the screen as well. We have 4 sons. The older 3 have all been through GCSEs in various ways, and the older 2 have gone into apprenticeships. Beyond that, my 3rd son is currently in college. That's his first year in the formal education system. We've still got our 11-year-old learning from home. So that's us. Good to be with you. Chris, you might want to add a bit about your professional.
Yes, I mean, Alice has the brunt of home education, but I'm a maths teacher by profession, but I've also teach academic English at university as well. So I know about the at least maths GCSE part of things.
Thanks, Krish. Sam, are you going to join us on the panel, or are you just listening in today?
Just listening in.
Okay. Okay. Just checking in case you felt
Thank you.
like you wanted to contribute, but you're still welcome to contribute anyway. And then, of
Thank
course,
you.
there's me, and I also have, like Ruth, I have 7 children, and just one that's still technically home educating, doing his A levels from home with very little input from me. And he's doing sort of maths, further maths and physics, and that is why there's very little input from me. Says about it or about all. So anyway, and then of the others, they're all either in work or have gone on to university, self-employed, all doing different things. One that's kind of between at the moment, she's doing some volunteering and working part-time, and probably going to start uni in September. So all of these panelists who've had children who've gone through some form of secondary and are now moving towards adulthood, we all have different perspectives and we've had different journeys. So some of us have told a little bit about that journey. But you know, I think that you know, people have different questions about, you know, GCSEs or exams or whatever. And one of those might be, you know, can you do GCSEs when you're a home educator? So, you know, are they accessible? So who would like to take that question? Ruth, you want to take that one?
Yeah, okay. Well, the answer is yes, obviously, because we've all done them. Basically, the way that you do it is that you sit them as a private candidate. So that involves finding an exam centre. So quite often that's the first step in the process, is to find out what exam centres there are that are near you that facilitate exams in that way. It does mean that you have to pay for them yourself, and that, generally speaking, I think for a lot of home educators means that you have to kind of decide on the financial structure of how you're going to take them. So, you know, if you're paying, I think it's somewhere around £200 it costs us for each subject. Obviously, in schools, they do perhaps 9 in one sitting. Well, obviously, that's quite a financial constraint. So it's very common. And indeed, we did kind of stagger those. We did kind of a couple to start with, and then, you know, over perhaps 3 years, we'll take them. So I think the youngest that we ever took any GCSEs was at age 14. That was largely to fit in because the everything was changing to a new exam. So we just put 4 of them all through while we'd got the books that weren't going to change. So one part to kind of catch up at 14 and do the same as their older siblings. But, you know, again, this is the joy of home ed, that you can spread the pressure out, you can spread the finances out, and you really carve a path that suits your child. So it is, you know, there is no set age that you have to do them. Either you can sit them earlier or you can sit them later. You know, our COVID kind of hit our exam capacities. So we've got our 18-year-old is now just doing his first year of A levels, but he's a year behind. I hate that word, but he's, you know, he couldn't do anything in COVID because you couldn't sit the exams. So, you know, but it doesn't matter. You know, that's the point. He's they just come at it when they're ready and when it works. So yeah, so that's the thing. I think there's a help online as well that nowadays that there never used to be. So there's a HE exams wiki. It'd be good if we could get that link up, because that covers a lot of the kind of basic questions about how it works.
And it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing just to add is that your GCSEs don't have to cost that. If you can find, so often if you can find a school that already has an exam center set up, if you're fortunate enough that they're willing to accept private candidates, it'll cost you significantly less. They can be quite hard to find, because to them, they know their job and they've got their kids in school that they're accommodating. So if you to accommodate an extra kid that's not from the school complicates their lives, but so they may not, but sometimes you're fortunate. Alice, did you want to add something on that?
Yes, because there's a new initiative in one of our local further education colleges where they've opened a new kind of wing of the college for home educated young people aged 14 to 16 to go in and do English, maths and English literature GCSE so they go in, I think it's a day and a half a week, and the exams and the tuition over the 2 years is covered by the college. So we are starting to see different possibilities as well opening up for people, and it might be worth checking with your
Yes.
local colleges if that is something that might suit your child.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of colleges that are offering that. So you do need to ask, where is that one, Alice? Is that a local one to Coventry?
Yes, that is the North Warwickshire South
Oh,
West
yeah.
College.
Yes.
In Nuneaton.
So it's something that colleges are starting to pick up on and starting to do, where they do 14 to 16 provision. So it's worth finding out, because that can help quite a bit, I think. And also, like, the thing about we use tutors and exams because they are extending across the country now, and they actually started in Coventry, so I've had a long-standing relationship with them, and they've sponsored the conference before, sponsoring our t-shirts actually, and they do try very hard, but because they run all year round and they're not a school, they don't get government funding, and they have to pay salaries and that kind of thing. There's a reason they have those fees. They have to keep staff all year round. They have to keep premises all year round. So they can't. That's why, I think people are sometimes not terribly impressed by the price, but there is a reason. And they try to be as efficient as possible, and they often take up new offerings. So they will provide. So like whereas before you couldn't do science practicals if you were a home educator, they are now facilitating that. And what are some of the others that they facilitate, where kind of the coursework sort of elements?
They started offering art and design as well, which for a long time
Yeah.
was tricky to do as a home educator. But no, our third son Noah was one of their first people through doing art and design. Yeah.
So a lot of that is improving. So do go and find it and speak to local home educators in your area. I see, as I said, that I think Manchester, sorry, I need to open the chat. They're offering the 14 to 16. So yeah. So you can go and find out, and normally your local communities will know as well. And it's quite important to find groups where you can go and get those questions answered. So besides GCSEs, there are other options, and one of the options is some of what Kat has discussed, and we will have Michelle Holmes also doing a presentation on an alternative way, following the American route or route, as you'd say, Kat. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, because that has been, kids have been successful getting into uni through that route, haven't they?
Right. So basically, American students can apply to UK university with an American route to being accepted. So what some people have done in the UK, and in fact, the first time I heard about this, it was from a Learn Free conference about 4 years ago, when Shirley Vels gave a talk at the in-person conference a few years ago about how she was doing this route. And I thought that's very interesting that that's open for UK students as well. I think the short version of this is that what happens in the US is that we have 4 years of secondary, because we start our secondary schools at year 10. And during your year 10, 11, 12, and 13, which in America is 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, you study modules of different subjects. And every year that you study your module, you may have between 6 and 8 modules that you study through the whole year. And then once you complete those modules in there are various ways that you can count them complete, but you just keep a record of that in a spreadsheet. And over the 4 years, you gather these modules up to reach a magic number that can be 22, 25, 30, whatever. It kind of depends on your state primarily. And once you reach that magic number of how many credits or modules you've done over the 4 years, then you can consider that student finished with secondary school and issue them with a homemade diploma, which is a high school diploma. And there are each university in the UK will accept a high school diploma because it accepts it from American students, so it will also accept it from UK. It's a little bit more complicated and case-by-case basis because the UK universities have almost everyone has a different way of what they want you to do for jumping hoops. But essentially, that's the groundwork. And we're understanding that Scottish universities, a number of them have said that they will take the American transcript high school diploma entry hoop to jump through quite readily now. They've just announced it a few months ago. And in fact, one of the things that some universities want to have in the UK is something called the SAT exam, which you can actually access in the UK. It's about £100 on a Saturday morning for 3 hours at a center. And it's a multiple choice literacy numeracy aptitude test. And you get a score on that at the end of the day. And so a lot of universities in the UK will want a high school diploma and the SAT score. But Scottish universities are saying they don't even need the SAT score anymore. So I think that the more that people are looking into this route and doing it either through the international admissions or through even mature student admissions, on a case-by-case basis, more and more home educated students are getting into universities of their choice for the programs they want to do. And that, in a nutshell, is the American route to UK university. It's also obviously a route to American university. And we're having a discussion on HE Success Without UK Exams right now about the pros and cons of doing that, because in some ways it can be cheaper than going to a UK university. And in some ways, maybe not, but at least you've got more options and more routes this way as well.
Thanks for that, Kat. And I think it is really good to, because I mean, it's quite a money saver going and sitting that test, the 3-hour test. And I think if I had more time in my life to investigate it, I probably would. But yeah, and kids are getting into uni like that. And I think one of the great things we're seeing is that the more we've got a lot of, oh, sorry, I've got an alarm going off here. We've got a lot of home educators that are now, we've got second generation families that are home educating, but there's so many now. There are so many home educated kids now going into colleges, going into universities, and gradually they are winning over and overcoming the stereotypes. If I had to ask my children what to them was the biggest disadvantage of home education, what it boiled down to when we had the discussion, it boiled down to actually the discrimination they encountered with people believing that, oh, they, you know, how did you get this? Oh, or you sat at home in your pajamas all day, or you know, and you know, bless you that you want to come to college, but I'm not quite sure that you're going to be up for it. It might be a little bit harder than what you used to. Sorry, truth bomb. Our kids are killing it at these colleges. They are getting distinctions across the board. The colleges, when they have an interview with these kids, they want that kid in their class because the children come, I find generally just because of the different way of educating our children, they're positive about their subject matter. They're excited. We haven't put them in that course because we think it's a good idea. They've normally directed themselves there, and they're passionate about it and excited. And the tutor or whoever who's interviewing them, they pick up on this and they think, wow, don't see this every day. I want this kid in my class. And I've seen that again and again and again. And Alice had said, okay, sorry, that's a different conversation about tax credits, which I would have know nothing about. But I think that college is still considered full-time education, to my knowledge. and it's still funded by the government until they turn 19. So does that help? Does it answer that? So Amy had asked the question about whether people keep tax credits, but certainly the college route for me and for my family, most of my children has worked really, really well. They only have to go in like not more than 3 days a week, so they can still get a part-time job if they want. They are, I don't know, I've just found it works pretty well, and I haven't really had an issue with my kids going that system. And Chris, you're doing a lot of nodding, so I'm sure you've got something to say on the matter. Can you unmute?
Just sorry, yeah. It is true. I mean, what you say, Julia, that our kids do crush it when it comes to going into college. And Nara at the moment is doing a sports and coaching diploma. It's part of Loughborough University College, but they're operating from Warwick University campus. But I'm just saying that he is getting really good grades, distinctions on his assignments. So that is true. The other thing to say, I was just going to say, is there are so many more options now in terms of higher education. So students, once they've done their college or whatever their sixth form kind of education they choose, they can go. There are courses on Udemy and Coursera that equip young people to do jobs. So it's not just a university route, and universities are now having to really compete for their customers, basically. So it's actually probably much easier now to get into university because they are competing for your custom at the moment. I think they're, because of the internet has opened up so many courses online, which are, to be honest, much better value for money. Universities have to fight for your custom. So home educators, if they have that portfolio, may get in more easily than previously thought.
Yes, Alice.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in our family, it was really helpful with the children who knew what they wanted to go on to. Two of our sons had quite clear plans about where they wanted to head towards. So in that case, it's really great because you can kind of work backwards in thinking about what qualifications to do and what they might need to get on to the next thing that they want to do. So as Ruth was saying about not needing to do 9 GCSEs and not needing to do them all at the same time, you might learn that in order to get onto the course they might want to do at college, they need 5 GCSEs. So you can then think, okay, we need to tackle 5. Let's think about which ones are going to be most relevant. So for our son Noah, because he was so interested in sport, it was great to have that flexibility for choosing his GCSEs. He could choose biology because that was the most relevant science to what he's interested in. And he did psychology, which I don't think he would have been able to do in school. And so those have been great preparatory GCSEs for his particular career option. So you can kind of work backwards like that and think, okay, well, to get onto that college course that you're interested in, you would need 5 GCSEs. And then you can spread those out over several years. So that kind of working backwards is a good way to think ahead. It's a little more tricky if your child really doesn't have any idea what they want to do, which was the case with one of ours. And then you might want to keep options a bit more open. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything else to comment on that.
Well, the thing I'd like to add about college, because I've had quite a fair bit of experience with them now, is that there's different levels. So normally there's foundation level 1, level 2, level 3, and you can get level 4 as well. But where they start a kid basically traditionally has been what they come with. So what do they bring? Do they have GCSEs? What are the grades? What level are they at? Do they have a portfolio, and so on? And so you would find children from school who hadn't done very well in their GCSEs and might have only just got 1 pass or something. They would be put on foundation, but they would still try and accommodate them. And then they would have to climb their way up through level 1, level 2, level 3. So the more you take along to a college interview, the higher you might get to start. So if you portfolios can be invaluable. So I have one son who he was doing an equivalent qualification to GCSEs, but he hadn't finished it. He was about halfway through. And I decided, because I was a bit fed up of him sitting on his computer all day long and just wasting his time. So I took him along to the college, took whatever I had, and I said, look, we printed out some of the things he was doing stuff on Photoshop and everything. We printed it out and put it in a folder. Went along and we said, look, we just really don't know what to do with him. Perhaps you can have a look and see what he's done and find a course that suits him. And they looked at his portfolio and they said, well, this is distinction level work. I mean, you could have blown me down with a feather because he was just messing about as far as I was concerned. Distinction level work. He didn't have maths, he didn't have English. They put him straight onto the BTEC level 3 extended, which I know they're changing to T levels now, but BTEC level 3 extended is basically like if you're going to go to college and you want to get your equivalent to 3 A levels, that's what you aim for. And so they put him straight on that, no GCSEs whatsoever. And they said he needs to do his maths and English while he does his BTEC. They did really well, and he's now self-employed, building websites and all sorts, doing really well for himself. He's just had his wife's just had a baby recently. She doesn't work, doesn't need to work, and they're doing just fine. Thank you very much. He's always one and he was totally self-taught with all Photoshop and all of that. He was totally self-taught, never done a course or anything in his life. So, the thing is you've got to give the college something to work with, and don't think it's nothing. Because when your children are indulging their passions and so on, you'd be amazed what paths it takes them on. And if you can get evidence to sort of show more or less where they're at, what their level is, and get them in an interview and let them talk, that is half the thing. Because the distinct impression I got is that these guys are used to listening to children who don't really know quite why they're there. They've been told they need to go there because they didn't do so well in their GCSEs. They can't go to sixth form and do A level. So, well, what else are you going to do? You're going to go. And they kind of, just don't really know why they're there. But the difference I've found with home educated kids on the whole, they very much know why they're there, and they want to be there because they see it as this hoop that will get them where they, it's a step to get them where they want to go. And so you do have to go to the college or something. Now I know they are changing to T levels in some things, and I don't know a heck of a lot about it, but I was interested because I went to, you might laugh at me, but I attended the Conservative Party conference last year, and I went and sat in a session on the education, like the T levels and all of that, and I asked a question about home educators and everything, and this guy was one of those, well, you might find that a home educated child will really struggle with this. Oh my goodness. I wasn't terribly happy about that, and I did go and have a few words with him afterwards. But the thing is that my children were mostly, that son that I described, totally self-directed for the most part. So they just kind of keep a record, keep an idea, ask them to keep evidence, or just build a portfolio, and that will help. But the colleges, you need to give them something to work with. I remember going with my son and overhearing other people trying to get their children into college, and what I was hearing from those conversations is, you've got to give us something. We can't just like take you with nothing. You've got to give us something. So, but they're not. One of my one daughter, the college we applied to for her, they were a little bit like, well, what is this qualification? We don't know it. It's unfamiliar. It was an American curriculum. that we were using with an equivalent thing. And eventually because she was a little older and she was keen, they put her on the course, and then eventually she was hardly even going in, but they didn't say a word because her grades were so good. She was the top student in her class. And she got into university. She actually also didn't finish GCSEs or anything, so she didn't finish that qualification. There's always a way. And it is important to try and speak to the college yourself. Try and get that interview. Try and just push as a parent. Don't let people sort of shut you off or cut you off before you've even had a proper go, because that can often clinch it. I don't want to be talking all the time, but the others, we were talking about how you're talking about working backwards, Alice. So the 5 GCSE thing, we had one Leah, my daughter, where she was going to do psychology, and that she couldn't do it because she didn't have a tutor. So she had a tutor for maths and English so she could get those grades. She couldn't get psychology, so she went with 4. And if you speak to the wrong person, they'll say, oh, no, she can't be on this course. She's only got 4. And then there's the tutor on the other side saying, come, it's okay, it's fine. So talk to the right people, because the pen pushers will often not get it. Anyway, anyone else got anything to add on that? Ruth, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just unmuting. I covered over my mute button for a second. Well, just Leanne's just put a question on, which is just about when and how you discuss GCSEs with your children and at what age. She says her 2, 10 and 12 don't enjoy school-like work, so I'd like to wait until they know what they'd like to do, as Alice said. But if that never happened, I don't want to let them down or leave it too late.
Okay, Kat's got a hand up.
Do you respond to that, Kat?
I think Alice might have something to say, and I'd also like to, because I do actually have a conversation. Naughty.
So my experience with my own 4 children particularly is that they matured at different rates from each other, even though we did the same kind of liberal arts study throughout our schooling. And I had, particularly my middle 2, didn't really blossom in their studies, their self-directed executive functioning and all these kinds of things that really make home educating a lot more of a joy. They didn't do that until they were 16 or 17. And I mean, the difference was night and day. When they were in year 10 and year 11, which is traditionally your GCSE years, they were kind of useless of getting anything done. And I was despairing that we were going to make it through. The other thing is that in English particularly, and Chris might speak to this as well, is that between the ages of sort of 10 to 14, I find that the kind of strengths in English for most students that age is more of a parroting back kind of level of maturity. So they can read a book and they can understand a book, but that intuitive implied meaning that you need for English GCSEs doesn't usually kick in until about 14. And that's one reason that most people, home educators who have experience, and then myself as an examiner, would suggest an English language GCSE or IGCSE to be taken later. They're designed to be taken at 16 years old. And I don't feel like many people should rush, particularly in the English exam. Some people argue that something like maths or sciences can be done earlier because they're more clear cut. So essentially what I would say is, I'm not surprised your 10 and 12-year-olds don't like school, like work very much. And it's probably going to change over the next 3 or 4 years. And so I wouldn't fret about it. I think what will happen is they will start to find directions that they enjoy. So one of my middle children, my daughter, found that she really likes sciences and languages. And I'm so glad I was home educating her, because she was studying Spanish and Greek And my other son he went from Spanish to Japanese, and the opportunities that they have just in something like foreign languages is so much better than at school, where often they will timetable languages against each other. So someone has to choose their languages. And those kinds of things, they just do happen. I follow the Charlotte Mason method, and one of the main principles of it is that children are born persons, which means that they do have a curiosity for learning, and they will find things that really inspire them and spark their interest. It just will perhaps take a while before that happens.
Alistair, do you want to bring in anything there?
Yeah, I would like to say don't feel any pressure to rush towards GCSE, because sometimes I hear people talking about, you know, wanting to get their kids going on GCSE earlier, and I don't know, in our house it wasn't, well, they weren't the years we most loved, let's just put it like that. Like, there's something, like, anyone who follows me knows I'm quite like anti-standardized testing generally, so maybe the kids picked up on that, I don't know, but like I don't know, they're kind of dry, and you have to like learn the facts and regurgitate them on the paper, and you know, there is an element of, it's like a hoop that you're jumping through, and so they don't really bring me joy, I have to say, GCSE. So why rush them? I mean, all the great stuff that you can be doing through the, you know, 11, 12, 13, 14 age, where they can be doing loads of fun projects and stuff that they really love, digging into their interests. As Kat said, there's time later then for those things to perhaps become more formalized, or blossom into qualifications. But like, I really wouldn't worry about it at this stage in terms of feeling like you've got to, you know, be pushing them ahead to that stage. We did with Noah, we did the first one the year that he would have been in year 9, he was 14. We started with environmental management, which was, you know, other home educators said that's quite a good one to start with, because there's an element too of like learning to learn in that way, in the way that the exam requires, learning to answer the questions in the way that is needed. And so we found doing one that year, we kind of learned from our older son's experience that was a good idea, and for him that was a nice introduction. He then did 2 the year that he would have been in year 10, and then 3 the year that he would have been in year 11, ending up with 6. And you know, that learning to answer the questions in the right way, and kind of do what's expected in the exam, there's a whole learning process to that. And for him, there was a lot of great learning actually in the whole experience, because he was having to learn in perhaps a different way than what he'd been used to. Yeah, and there was a lot of mindset work involved, so him needing to be engaged in the process and kind of understand why he was doing it. So another thing that's really important to me is the child's own intrinsic motivation. I don't know how I would have pulled them through GCSE. Like, it needed to come from, there had to be something in them that was up for it and willing to engage and do it. So it might be that, you know, that comes a bit later, or they're a little bit older, and actually, you know, why does it matter if they do them when they're 16, 17, 18? Like, if I want to go and do a GCSE maths now, I could go and do it, couldn't I? Like, so with none of the pressure of the system that says, you know, at age 16 they need to be here and have done this, and there really is not that same time constraint, which is so welcome.
Yeah, what I wanted to say, so what I tended to do, and I didn't do this with all my children because we had very weird circumstances at times, and as I said, we did some alternatives to GCSEs, which we didn't even finish really. And my older daughter, she actually said to me, look, I want to do something else now, I want to move on. And so, you know, she took that on. And then I had another one who said, I think I'll do some GCSEs. And then we had a conversation. We said, okay, well, these are the different ones you can do. And basically I need to book it, and we need to get the books that you need to study for that exam. And one of those papers she studied for less than 4 months for. On a subject she'd never done before. And I think that's the whole thing, is the way the schools present it. It is of necessity sort of drawn out, because you've got a bunch of children, you're trying to bring them all along with a good understanding and that kind of thing at the same time. But a child who's working on their own can go as fast or as slow as they want. But what I would normally do at some point, so when they were sort of approaching around 13, I would have a conversation and I would say, just so you know, this is how England works. This is how what universities might want to see. This is like, so, have a little think about something you think you might be wanting to do. And this is like the website where it tells you different exams you can do. So that's like one way you can get through the hoops to get to this thing or that thing. And I explained the college system to them, how that worked. And then I left it up to them. And we normally would choose to do the have-tos, the maths and the English. We would, put them on the list, and then basically they would choose what else they wanted to do. My one son did his first one at 13, but only because I had my two youngest with a maths tutor, because I'm not. My maths is okay, but it'll take me a while to, my logic is not the same. And if they ask me for help, by the time I'd worked it out, they'd be, Mom, I already got it. Sorry. So the reason I let them go to a tutor was to prepare them for sitting an exam, to understand the English exams and what would be required, what we looked for. And because that tutor, he said, you know what, we're doing probability anyway. So if you want, I could sign your kids up for stats. And they could do a stats exam. And that's what we did. So my son we saw it as a taster, just an exposure to the process, and it didn't matter if he passed or not. It was just that he had that experience and he knew what to expect, and that was fine. And I think the thing is, you might want to sign your children, you might want to let them have a taster to sort of kind of see how it is with something that doesn't matter too much. But we did have that conversation, but it's not, I think the thing is, there are so many different ways that children approach it, and there are many success stories of children who weren't really thinking about things like that. And I mean, for crying out loud, who was thinking about their future really at the age of 12? And you've got to realize that this is England or the UK. In South Africa, you are in primary until you're 12. You start high school the year you turn 13. There's no GCSEs, nothing. Everyone goes to school till they're 18 and they do a final matric examination. And that's the one that matters. And the thing is that there are books and research that I've looked into where the way boys and girls operate, the way their brains are, is that boys might sort of mess about in the early years. But then suddenly they get to a certain age and they're like, oh, getting serious about life. But by that time, the British schools have said, oh, sorry, you don't make the grade. Off you go. And actually, if they'd just given that kid another year, he might have actually just totally come to the party and got in, and there's something very wrong with the system in this country. I just have to get that out there. While there are lots of opportunities in some ways, in other ways that funneling is so narrow. But I think you all know that anyway. So Ruth and Alice have their hands up, so we'll start with Ruth.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up what Alice said about motivation and how, it's not about dragging your children through. But I think from our experience, our oldest ones, we've got to a point where very much, we've done all the kind of projects and all the fun stuff, if you like. And I think when the eldest were about 12, 13. Sorry, I don't work in school years. But, we, as parents, I was thinking that I was noticing that they weren't particularly either driven to do the work. They were quite enjoying it. But I realised that because we'd never been kind of marking them and actually saying, are you working at whatever grade level, there was a certain amount of freewheeling that was going on. And I knew that it didn't matter whether they did, X amount or Y amount in any day. So long as they did some, we were kind of happy. We were quite laid back in terms of timetabling and all that. And so we kind of got to a point where we felt that they didn't know whether they were working at their capacity, at their best, or what they were capable of. So we had the conversation at that point, and said to them, what do you think? Because we'd never thought in terms of exams. We were more focused on character, on, being diligent, on being curious, all those character traits that we felt would take them through in life. But it just got to that point where we felt that for their sakes, they needed to know that they were working hard, and exams were, we put it to them, what about if you just did one exam each? you know, I think this was about the November time, who said, you know, what do you think about that? And it was a bit of a shock to them, I think. But, you know, they really responded to that. And that was why we started doing exams, because it was this motivation thing. And they applied themselves. My daughter went on to do 9 GCSEs, not because we wanted, but because she is the most academic and she wanted to do these subjects. And it just unleashed the best of her. I mean, that's not the case. I mean, she's the only girl. The rest are all boys, and boys are a different kettle of fish in our house anyway. But that was why we started doing them. And I mean, once we kind of got started, I think as well, I'd always kind of, because I knew a lot of people who were a lot earlier on the journey, they didn't actually do exams because they were having a lot of interviews to get into different courses. And I think what I've kind of seen, and I may be wrong, was that when you're applying for things online, there are tick boxes that you have to kind of fulfill the criteria. You can't always get an interview these days because so much of it is online. So I think for us, that was a consideration that, you know, if they want to go in a certain route, then, you know, there are certain requirements, and exams were a large part of that. So we felt that it did open certain doors whilst not being fixed, that, you know, the idea that you had to do too many or you know, as many as they do in schools. It was just, that was a consideration for us as well as we've gone on. Certainly when you're applying for jobs, you know, there's not the space to write. If you haven't done exams, you can't say what you've done instead. It's like either yes or no, you've got them, or you haven't. And so that, I think, is more these days, is more a consideration as everything's gone online. So over to you, Alice.
Yeah, thank you. I love the way that everybody's got different stories and different pathways. And, you know, that's right, isn't it? Because it depends so much on your family situation and your particular children. And in our house too, the dynamics, because we've got 4 boys. When my eldest was kind of getting to the age of thinking about GCSEs, our youngest was only 4. And so there was a kind of playoff as well between how much time and energy and attention I wanted to put into supporting GCSE, and then how much that would impact our little ones in terms of their enjoyment of their just play-based home education, really. So we had lots of conversations in our house as our boys moved into their teens, about, you know, we were always talking about these things anyway, aren't we, with our children, you know, about culture and learning. And there's also an element, I think our older 2, there was definitely an element of wanting to be normal when they got to about age 14, actually. Well, and also their understanding of the family dynamic and the impact that doing exams from home would have on us all, and all sorts of really great conversations, actually, as they got to sort of age 14 or so.
It probably also has to do with whether they know other kids that are in school, and they're kind of anxious to not be seen to be different.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of kind of elements that impact on these conversations and the timing and the decisions that you make. And in fact, our eldest 2 chose to go into a local university technical college at age 14, for all the reasons that I've just mentioned. And for one of them, that was a really great decision. And he wanted to pursue engineering. He's quite academic. He was quite driven and motivated and quite competitive, I have to say. Actually, he's got that element to his character. And he really flew. And then our second son, it wasn't great at all. And I just think he wasn't ready. Like we say, actually, I don't think he was mature enough, and he kind of opted out with his whole being of being measured and tested. And it was a really different experience. And in both cases, there was learning in it. They learned a lot about themselves as learners, about their own motivation, about what they enjoyed and didn't enjoy. And then our third son opted not to go into school, having watched his brothers take that route. So he did his GCSEs independently from home. So, you know, different children, different pathways, and lots of factors that come into the pathway that you decide to go.
And on that subject, I know that some home educators have made use of things like the Open University. Do anyone know of somebody who's done that? I have heard stories of some that have been able to go and get like a foundation degree, because often they don't have a sort of requirement that you need to have a GCSE. I think, you know, the thing is, there are different pathways, and it's always helpful to look at, I'm not saying everyone's going to turn out to be a millionaire or whatever, but Richard Branson dropped out of school as a teenager. He didn't get GCSEs. The founder of IKEA, he got into his business as a kid by doing something that had nothing to do with school, selling pencils and whatever door to door. And if you look, that yes, maybe there are a lot of home educated kids that are actually doing amazing things. There's a young girl by the name of, what is her name now, in Oxford, has a bakery. So she got into making bread and they started a bakery and she bakes. I can't remember her name now. And then there's our other favorite is Billy Arthur Walden, isn't it? Yep. And he came out of school. He did eventually get a couple of GCSE here and there and a college qualification here and there, but he's done pretty well. He does woodworking and he's been on TV and all sorts of things. He did a camper conversion and was on George Clark's Amazing Spaces, that kind of thing. So there are children doing different things. And if you think of all the many children who come out of school with insufficient GCSEs, what happens to them? They go on to do something. We hope. And I think that the difference with home educating is that, we're there to remind our children, no, you're not behind. Yes, there's always another way. You've got great qualities and gifts, and let's see how we can make the most of those. These kids that, as I say, starting entrepreneurs, starting their own businesses while they're teenagers, it's more common than you think. And hopefully, I think the main thing, as I said earlier on, the biggest challenge our young people have is facing discrimination. And we're going to have to win them over, we're going to have to win people over through our children. We don't want to put pressure on our children about that. Hopefully we don't put that pressure on them. But I think we don't need to put pressure on them. I think just them being themselves and actually following their interests and finding meaning in what they're doing, finding a career that suits them, that they enjoy and fulfills them, and happens to pay the bills at the same time. Hopefully more and more people will become aware that actually these kids are okay. And there another point that somebody raised something along these lines earlier is that think about all the qualities that are not measured by an exam. Showing up on time, being willing to take the initiative and clean things that are dirty at McDonald's, whatever, being consistent and reliable in your job. Those things are never put in an exam or a course, and yet employers value those qualities. So there's many other qualities that are sought after as well. Krish?
Yeah, I would totally agree with you that even if you got 9 GCSEs and you got A stars, it doesn't mean that you have got the skills to kind of tackle the workplace or whatever. There are skills of creativity, collaboration, critical thinking. Now, if we've got exams that purely judge our capacity to just regurgitate facts, it doesn't mean that you are a critical thinker. And these are the skills that employers need. So we as home educators are very aware of we're always looking at what's going on in the world. What do our kids need to be to be competent in the world of work, and that's something that we have to bear in mind, that school alone, college alone is not the answer. It's these other things that our kids need to work on.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that is almost a case of the emperor's got no clothes sort of situation, is that you've got this education system parading as something worthwhile, the piece of paper that you seek after, that's going to, you are told you won't get anywhere unless you get this piece of paper, and kids are killing themselves over it. But that piece of paper, if you look at it critically, which nobody is, you look at that piece of paper, what is the, Krish, you'll be able to tell me, what is the grade boundaries or whatever for GCSEs? What in maths? What do they need? To pass?
I don't know. Without, to be honest, without looking at my, I don't know. But they, the other thing about that to bear in mind is they follow a sort of normal distribution curve. So the grade boundaries shift from year to year, depending on what kids have done on the paper. So
But it can be as low as 30%, right?
yeah, 30% is you can get 30%. You get past probably a level 4. Yeah.
Yes, and so what I'm saying is, so basically you've got the education system saying, look at our world-class education, look at our curriculum, look at what we teach the kids. But actually kids are, if they pass with 30%, that's like, okay, you get a pass of what, a 4?
Yeah, it's
whatever
a grade 4, yeah.
grade 4, okay. So this child thinks, I'm a flipping genius. I got a 4 on my paper, but actually they only knew 30% of their curriculum. So why do we do that to the kids? Why do we put them under that pressure to, perhaps we should figure out where kids are at developmentally for the age and teach them what's developmentally appropriate and what they can actually, what is useful. And so that's kind of the problem I have. And you mentioned critical thinking, divergent thinking, creative thinking. The world we're in today is changing so rapidly that our kids are probably not going to stay in the same career. I mean, we know they're not going to. So why are we worrying too much about like getting them, so once again, this funnel? And you look at everything that we're facing in terms of technology, the growth of technology and AI and, social media and all of these things that we're dealing with. That old education is not going to cut it anymore. It doesn't matter whether you sit in class and do everything on a computer because that looks good because you're doing it on a computer. But if you don't actually have those skills, that critical thinking, divergent thinking, and I have my own personal opinion, and I'm not biased at all, is that, our home educated kids are going to be the ones that are going to come and solve those problems that we're going to be facing. And I think there's a reason that the education department doesn't like it and the government wants to squash it, but we know that there's more ways, and if you can't go through the front door, there's a back door, there's a window. So you're looking at what are the different ways to get your children. Well, you don't have to get them children. Basically, you're going to nurture that their interests and encourage them and to support them through their own processes. And one of the things I say to my kids is like, I don't need to go to university, or I don't need to get an education. I say, I've got to say that carefully because I don't mean it quite as I'm saying it, not so, because it depends how you define education. But I say to them, I've already done this in my life. I've made my choices. I've got the education that I wanted for my life. So now this is about you and your life, and it's not for me to tell you what to do. You are in the driver's seat. And it's giving your children that agency and that sense of empowering them to make good choices for their own lives as well. And that's where I think a confident, empowered parent comes in, because you model that for your children, don't you? So we had the other thing is somebody mentioned about what was it, the tree surgeon? Yeah, there are other ways. There are things like ballet qualifications that have got nothing to do with the school system, piano music qualifications that have nothing to do with the school system. There's other ways. We can be creative. I do know there's a young woman speaking at the conference on Saturday, Karen, that is second generation home educator. I've known her basically since her mom went into labor at my house, and she did a qualification in some kind of horse training thing. And although she went and she's doing research and that kind of thing now, but she could run a business like that. So there are other ways. We should be finishing off now, really. Sorry, guys, we've been talking. Leal asked about apprenticeships. Can I ask, have you guys gone and joined the, yes, Yana, that's Kathy's daughter. Have you guys gone and joined the Learn Free community group? Because then you can carry on with your questions there. and go and ask your questions there. So we'll take it over there if you want, because we need to wrap up right now. But it's actually been a good conversation. I've enjoyed hearing everyone's perspectives, and I hope you feel encouraged. I hope you feel like this is all good, all positive, and you got this. Leanne, you feeling good? Got it? Let them be kids a little longer. You know, look at other countries, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely my panic I need to get into control at this moment.
Well, this country is terrible for that, for everyone comparing and, you know, looking at, you know, oh, but are they here that, but are they here, you know, and that's a hamster wheel you don't want to get onto.
Yeah.
So you know what, just let them be kids, because if you look at Peter Gray, who talks a lot about unschooling, he's dealt a lot with children that were younger, unschooling, and when he looked at them, like some years later, they'd gone into careers that were very much linked to their play. The things they were playing at as kids, they often developed into a career path. So
yeah,
you know,
can I just say something real quick, because I feel like Leanne's panic or worry about the pathway ahead with the age of her children, and it never goes away. Like I only have one child still home educating for the next 2 years, so my third child is graduating from high school like in a week, and I'm thinking, oh, I didn't do the nature study I wanted to do with her. I didn't do the watercolor week that I wanted to do. All these things I kind of had ticky boxes that I wanted to do with her. And every time I have that panic, I have to realize we're never going to teach them everything that they could learn. And instead of trying to have this idea that we're going to teach them everything they need to learn by the time they're 18 or 19 or 16 or whatever, I just have to realize that I'm here to facilitate their executive function, their learning opportunities,
a love of
learning how to learn.
Yeah.
And as a home educating mom, you know that you're still learning when you're teaching your younger children, or when you're studying with your kids, or you're just talking to them over the table. And I'm 39 again, you know, I'm always 39, but I'm still learning all the time. So it's that you help them learn to learn that is a more important goal, I think, than certain things they have to learn. And because I want them learning all the time after they leave home. And remembering that, I think, takes pressure off of parents.
Yeah. I did want to sort of acknowledge that Heidi was joining us at some absurd hour in Australia, and she's got a lot of information on how they do things there, but we don't have time. Sorry, Heidi. But please join us on the Facebook group. Come and, you know, get in the conversation there. We'll carry it on. So I'm going to end this now because we've got another session 3:30. Thank you, everybody. I hope you got what you needed.